Iran's clearly a really evil regime. So I've been against the Iranian regime. I've been for freeing Iran for a long time. That is not what this administration says they're doing, and I respect that.
He would have been more than happy to invade Iran. He's been for free Iran for a long time, but of course that's not what Trump himself is doing. He's just trying to remove the threat of the nuclear program that Iraq does not really have.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup.
This is Ashley with Status Coup.
On the ground.
In Philadelphia.
Flint, Michigan. East Palestine, Ohio. Please support the leading independent news outlet on the ground.
Covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Ashley Bishop with Status Coup. War will always prove an opportunity for the worst of us, and the full-scale war with Iran that Trump all but declared Saturday night after dropping bunker buster bombs on Iraq's 3 nuclear sites is no different. Here's the chief operating officer of Lockheed Martin, Frank St. John, last week.
The COO of Lockheed Martin, Frank St. John, thank you for joining us. Lots to discuss because defense is the topic that is happening right now, and a lot of people are saying defense spending, are we in the beginning stages here, given everything we're seeing? Ukraine, the Middle East, or are we sort of in those middle innings? Where would you say we are?
Hey, Phil, good to see you again. And I would say we are in probably the beginning of a 3 to 5 year surge in defense spending, especially here in Europe. The first couple of years, there was a lot of dialogue and understanding the issue and understanding the demand for deterrence capability. Now we're starting to see those budgets come into play in the European countries, as well as some increases back in the U.S. domestically. So I think for the next 3 to 5 years, budgets are going to be pretty substantial.
Back in the U.S., a lot of people have heard the president talk about the Golden Dome missile defense system. On paper, makes sense. But you know there are more than a few cynics out there saying, now wait a second, huge country like the United States, could Golden Dome actually work? Give me your perspective in terms of not only can it work, you obviously believe in that, but how quickly could we see a system implemented?
Well, as the world's leader in integrated air and missile defense, Lockheed Martin is really proud to be part of bringing President Trump's vision to pass. And there are a lot of existing capabilities, be it space-based sensing, command and control, surface-based sensing, and effectors that have been proven in conflict over the last several years that are already in existence. The real challenge is scaling that up in quantity and then creating the integration of those separate pieces. And so we definitely think something can be fielded on a rapid pace.
So a Golden Dome missile defense in the U.S., if you think these defense contractors aren't thrilled about the growing prospect of an all-out war with Iran and aren't in Trump's ears fanning the flames of war for their own gain, I have a bridge to sell you for real cheap. And the increases in the U.S. Domestically that he was talking about show up in working people's lives as the increased militarization of police forces across the U.S., ICE raids, and crackdowns on protests. And the tweet that was above this video from Warren Gunnels reads, Lockheed relies on defense spending for 96% of its $64.7 billion in revenue, makes $5.3 billion in profits, pays its CEO $23.8 million, spends $6 billion on stock buybacks and dividends, and was fined $334 million for fraud. And there is a quote from Tupac, they got money for war, but can't feed the poor. So yeah, while working people are being pushed into what could become another forever war, sucking up every last bit of change that are still tossed in our general direction for social programs and anything that might benefit us, the military-industrial complex is expecting to make bank. And don't forget, that clip was from CNBC, happy to help manufacture consent for war that working people do not want. Lockheed Martin isn't the only one doing the media rounds right now, on CNBC in particular, to gin up support for this new war in the Middle East. Here is Joe Lonsdale, one of the co-founders of Palantir.
Point to understand is
they were going to throw flowers at us in Iraq. That never happened.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying they're going to throw flowers at us here, but this is a lot different situation. And it's you know, I work with a lot of amazing Persian people. I'm really excited to invest in Iran if we can get this country to be some sort of republic, not run by crazy people. And that's a lot easier than doing that in Afghanistan.
So he's really excited to invest in Iran if, you know, we can get rid of those evil people in charge. Palantir would be happy to do business with them. And of course he would. Peter Thiel built ICE's deportation machine. Now Palantir is processing 400 million plus data points inside Iran, from satellite images to social media, for the nuclear deal. War with Iran wouldn't just be catastrophic, it would mean billions in profits for Thiel and Palantir. So tech oligarch Peter Thiel, net worth $20.3 billion, and he's co-founder of PayPal, Palantir, and Founders Fund. He donated $1.5 million to Trump in 2016, and he would get $2.6 billion in government revenue in 2025. So, of course, Palantir is very happy to invest in Iran. And Palantir isn't the only one to potentially profit here. Here is OpenAI. Pentagon hands OpenAI $200 million to supercharge war AI. Is this the next Palantir? OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, just secured a $200 million contract with the U.S. Department of Defense to prototype frontier AI systems for critical national security use cases. And before I go on, this is from June 18th, so like last week. According to the Pentagon, the deal covers both warfighting and enterprise domains, with most of the work centered in Washington and running through July 2026. While this isn't OpenAI's first government partnership, it's their most significant of far bringing their tech deeper into defense at a time when U.S. officials are actively reshaping procurement strategy to prioritize homegrown AI solutions. So again, Palantir is not the only one who would profit here. So back to Thiel and Palantir, who expect to make billions. And there's Joe Lonsdale on CNBC garnering support for said war.
Or somewhere else.
Well, so how much do you think this is about? We were talking to the Minister of the Economy in Israel. Is it about regime change, like full-on regime change in Iran, versus just eliminating the nuclear threat?
Well, it's very clear that this administration says it's about eliminating the nuclear threat. That's their goal. I respect that. You know, when we attacked Iraq 20 years ago, even then I thought it was a mistake versus going after Iran. Iran's clearly a really evil regime. So I've been against the Iranian regime. I've been for freeing Iran for a long time. That is not what this administration says they're doing, and I respect that.
So he's attempting to cover for the Trump administration, who is clearly also signaling for regime change, per this tweet from Trump from yesterday, which says it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MIGA again, make Iran great again. But while Joe himself thinks war with Iraq and Afghanistan was a mistake because it is politically toxic to say otherwise, he would have been more than happy to invade Iran. He's been for freeing Iran for a long time, but of course that's not what Trump himself is doing. He's just trying to remove the threat of the nuclear program that Iraq does not really have. And it's in question how much damage our very successful attack on Iran's main nuclear site even did. But that doesn't matter because defense stocks were up today. The stock market is happy given the prospect of a fresh new sacrifice in the form of whatever remnants of global stability we still had. So we should all be happy too. Northrop, Lockheed, other defense stocks rise after Iran strikes. Why gains may not last. Defense stocks were rising in Monday's pre-market as investors reacted to U.S. strikes on Iran. Shares in Lockheed Martin were up. Shares in General Dynamics were up. L3Harris Technologies, Raytheon. All of the stocks were up today. The moves come after the U.S. struck 3 of Iran's nuclear development sites on Saturday, joining Israel in an attempt to keep Tehran from developing atomic weapons again that they were not close to having. The American strikes on Iran involved more than 125 U.S. aircraft, including 4th and 5th generation fighter jets from Boeing and Lockheed, Northrop Grumman's B-2 stealth bombers, dropping 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 bunker-busting bombs, refueling tankers, and reconnaissance aircraft. What's more, a submarine launched more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles made by Raytheon. Essentially, almost the entire U.S. defense industry played some role in the Saturday strikes. Right. Breaking. Numerous U.S. politicians appear to have bought war stocks before U.S. attacked Iran. U.S. Congressman Roz Bresnahan bought Lockheed Martin, a weapons manufacturer, on May 15th. Representative Jared Moskowitz bought Lockheed Martin on April 7th, 2025. Unusual. Yes, how unusual, and they are not the only ones. So this is a tweet from Quiver Quantitative. We spent the last 2 weeks sounding the alarm on purchases of defense stocks by politicians on armed services committees. The U.S. just carried out strikes on Iran, regardless of opinions of the attack. I think most would agree that Congress should not be trading defense stocks. So Senator John Boozman just filed a purchase of Raytheon stock. Boozman sits on the Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense, and his full trade lists are up on Quiver if you are curious to see. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen just filed hundreds of thousands of dollars of new new stock trades. One of them stood out to us. He bought stock in L3Harris. L3Harris produces drone technology, and Mullen sits on the Armed Services Committee. Representative Gil Cisneros has filed dozens of new stock trades. One that stood out to us was a purchase of Northrop Grumman stock. Cisneros sits on the House Armed Services Committee. And finally, Representative Julie Johnson has bought stock in General Dynamics. General Dynamics is a defense contractor, and she sits on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. This is the first time we have seen her trade General Dynamics. So our representatives in Congress who assumably are being briefed about important national security issues, considering that they all sit on armed services committees, like, I don't know, the potential for strikes against Iran and escalating likelihood of full-scale war, are also profiting from said conflict. So remember that the next time you see one of these horrible people on CNBC or wherever else telling you, what a great threat Iran is to the US and how scared that you should be that they're going to retaliate against our bombing them, they're profiting off of this. Just like they profit off of every other conflict and certainly have hit the jackpot with Israel and their insatiable desire for destruction and death. And while they profit, the rest of us are to suffer the consequences of war. Here is a woman that I spoke to at a protest against the war with Iran last week.
Please don't bomb my parents. So can you explain your sign?
My parents are in Iran right now. They were living in Tehran when the bombing started, and I managed to convince them to leave Tehran 2 nights ago. Now they're in the north. They've evacuated, but I watched them on Find My iPhone, tracking their car to make sure that they weren't bombed on the way. I was tracking overnight. I would wake up every hour. Me and my sister, who's in England, would take shifts. I still have so many friends in Tehran. I still have so many of my friends still have parents, have old grandparents that are in Tehran and can't evacuate. I still can't believe that this is actually happening. Anybody who thinks that the Iraq war was a mistake should be here. And everybody who was at the anti-Trump protests should be here. If they don't support war, they should be here.
So that is the face of war. Like she said, we should be doing all that we can to at least try to stop the war machine before it moves any further. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, follow, and subscribe to Status Coup. And if you can, please become a member at statuscoup.com/join so that we can bring you more on-the-ground coverage like what you just watched from the protest against the war with Iran. And again, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.